Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Work From Home Show. Shout out to all our homies, homeboys, homegirls, home trans, all the work from homers out there. I'm Naresh Vissa. Today we have on our show Gregory Wrightstone. He's the executive director of the CO2 Coalition and best-selling author of Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. Gregory Wrightstone, thank you so much for joining us on the Work From Home Show.
Oh, good to be on with you. And in honor of your show, I'm actually working from home today instead of into my office.
Well, aren't you saving the environment by not taking your car on the road and polluting the air?
Well, as we'll explore over the next 30 minutes, the environment's doing just fine. And
well, let's start with that. Let's start with that. So, is that a myth? Is the whole idea of cars are so they contribute so much to pollution, they're bad for the environment, and electric is a new thing, which I really like. I'm starting to like these newer model Teslas that are coming out, not because of the idea of electric. I just like how I like the business. I like how they're designed. But with that being said, going back to my original statement, what's wrong with what I just said, if anything?
Well, you're supporting. This is the new blood electricity. We heard of blood diamonds. You can't buy any electric car that's made without using Chinese slave labor or the cobalt that's mined in Africa by young boys as young as 8 and 9 years old. So we're using both slave labor and child labor to create this virtue signaling that people are doing. And the other thing is people are promoting electric vehicles to save the planet because, of course, our carbon dioxide, when you burn fossil fuels, what happens when you burn natural gas, for example? You create, for every molecule of methane that's burned, you create 2 molecules of water vapor and 1 molecule of carbon dioxide. And at the CO2 Coalition, we're strong supporters of the many benefits that the Earth and its ecosystems are seeing from more CO2. So actually, if we look, I'm a geologist, if we look throughout Earth's long history, we find that the carbon dioxide or CO2 levels we have today are some of the lowest in all of Earth's history. We're 1/6 today, 1/6 of the average of carbon dioxide throughout Earth's history. So actually, if you look at this in the long context, we're CO2 impoverished. We don't have too much CO2. Actually, the plants that you look out your window need more CO2 to thrive even more. So we see that the modest warming combined with more CO2 is leading to an Earth's ecosystems that are thriving and prospering, and humanity's benefiting from that. And we also see, you talked about the emissions from cars that are just terrible, apparently. I would encourage your listeners to just Google 2 words, EPA and pollution. And you'll find a chart there. Probably the first thing that pops up on a Google search is their chart of the 8 main pollutants in the atmosphere. And you'll find, I think this goes back to 1980, but our atmospheres is cleaner today and much cleaner than probably it's been since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And it's getting slightly cleaner every year. The problem with cleaning it even more is that it's already so low. To get the last 1/billionth of whatever it is out of the atmosphere is really difficult and really expensive. But again, both our air and our water are cleaner today than they've probably been in 150 or 200 or more years. I mean, for crying out loud, Lake Erie, for example, was a trash lake. There was nothing living, virtually nothing living. They're doing major tournaments there. The Three Rivers of Pittsburgh were so polluted, virtually no fish of any sort could live, except for catfish could live in the bottom environments. Today they're holding bass fishing tournaments. So we should celebrate the success we've had cleaning our air and our water. And the other, but again, we're told there's a climate crisis. If we look at it and actually look at the science, the facts, and the data of what they're claiming, in just about every case, what you're being told about this climate crisis is just factually incorrect.
We had, I believe, your colleague on the show, Patrick Moore, a while back, and he helped explain what you talked about, the idea behind carbon dioxide. Like that's a good carbon is a good element, and for whatever reason, the left has vilified carbon and want to curb the emissions of carbon as much as possible. I think a lot of this started because, in fact, I never even heard, maybe I was really young, but I just never even heard of climate change or this idea that global warming was going to destroy humanity. Like I knew it was a thing, and you might say, look, it's not even a thing, but I just heard about it like in class and stuff, but I didn't start hearing the fear mongering until Al Gore came out with his documentary Inconvenient Truth, and your book is called Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. So first off, again, I was really young. I knew Al Gore as the vice president of the United States who didn't really do a whole lot no vice president really does, which is not a knock on him personally. It's just you don't really do much as vice president. So I knew him as a vice president of the United States, and then he lost the election, and then all of a sudden, a few years after that, after 2000, he comes out with this documentary which won an Oscar, and which at the time I think became one of the most watched documentaries of all time. How on earth did this happen? Like, the guy doesn't have any scientific background. How did this happen?
Well, he does have some scientific background. He took one science class when he was in college, and he got a D in it. So to say he's completely devoid of science is probably a stretch. Let's just say he's very limited in his knowledge. And so he's anymore when you listen to him, he's deranged. At Davos last month, he started screaming about boiling oceans and that we only have a few years left. Well, he's been saying we've only got a few years left now for what, 28 years? And
well,
the
I'm
Earth
curious,
is...
before you move on, when I hear people say things like that, I'm thinking that there's some type, and I'm a marketer. I have a marketing company. There's some type of urgency where he wants people to take out their wallets and give money, and he's going to somehow end up with that money. That's just how it comes across. I'm curious if that's a right assumption to make, or if that's just, not true.
Well, he's certainly, whatever the facts of why he's doing it, the fact is he's making a lot of money, a lot of money. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars now, so or tens of millions. But
I read hundreds.
He sold his network to Al Jazeera. So he's doing very well, living in his seaside mansions that he's lecturing us not to do.
Yeah, he's worth more than $300 million. And when he left office, he may have been lucky to even be a millionaire when he left office in 2000 or 2001. But anyway, I'll let you finish your answer about Al Gore. So he is getting very rich off these speaking engagements. I guess when and it's not just speaking, it's the books, it's the speaking, it's his network, it's I'm sure he has products to sell or is a spokesperson for certain like environmentally friendly types of products. But yeah, go ahead regarding, okay, so he He has a limited scientific
Well,
background. How did he become the expert in this space, though?
well, he had a big microphone, a loud voice. He said outrageous things. Think of the little Swedish girl. Well, she's not so little anymore. She's what, 20 years old now? Greta
Greta
Thunberg.
Thunberg. Yep.
And I mean, why do we listen to her? She dropped out of school. She knows nothing about the climate or climate change. And she's got lots of issues, but yet her parents put her out there because, she's saying all the right things, isn't she? And now by all the right things, that means the planet is being killed by us and we must restrain fossil fuel use and don't use those anymore. And it's it what they're trying to do really. It's an anti-human agenda that they're promoting. They want to restrain and restrict the people. We've got our Vijay Jayaraj he lives in southern India and writes a lot about energy poverty. We deal a lot with India and those 600 million people living in energy poverty. And what is energy poverty? That means that you're surviving and you're living without access to electricity, which means that you would have to go home. You or your wife or whoever's doing the cooking has to cook over dried dung or wood in the homes. And Prime Minister Modi is trying to promote 100% electrification for India to pull these people up out of generational poverty. It's a noble goal, and people shouldn't live like that. They're living on less than $1 a day. And how does Prime Minister Modi want to lift his people up out of poverty? It's by providing reliable, abundant, affordable energy. And he's doing it just as President Xi in China is doing it by mining more coal, creating more electricity generation facilities using coal and natural gas. And that's what we should do. We should use all forms of energy that make sense. And we should do it as good stewards. What they want to do, what Greta Thunberg and Al Gore and John Kerry want to do is destine those 600 million people in India. They want to trap them with this new Western colonialism in generational poverty. They don't want them to be happy, to be able to cook on a stove without burning dried dung. No, I think we should lift people up, celebrate the benefits of fossil fuels and the benefits of more carbon dioxide. We call it the miracle molecule. They call it the devil molecule.
Yeah, with these people on the left, like Greta Thunberg, and look, I applaud Greta Thunberg for being so young. I think she was like 13 when she started giving speeches, and good for her. Like, that's quite an accomplishment for someone her age. But it's very clear that she's not a scientist when you hear her speak. And look, maybe because her audience is not people her age, because people her age listening to a scientist wouldn't really understand anything. In fact, people my age listening to a scientist don't understand half the stuff that's being said. But I applaud her for promoting herself and for getting her ideas out there.
Why would you applaud someone who's spreading false, alarmist ideas? I don't applaud her at all. I criticized her at the time, and I criticize her now. She's fostering this false idea of a climate crisis amongst people of her age. The young people going to bed at night scared to death that they're not going to, and they're talking about not having children because of the falsehoods that she's spewing. So no, we can disagree perhaps on that.
I'll say this:
they shut me up and we're censored.
I don't applaud her for her ideas. I just applaud her just the general idea of a 13-year-old going out and like it's hard for a 13-year-old to have a microphone like she has. So I'm applauding her for that. Now the ideas itself, I'm completely with you. I mean, they're falsehoods, and yeah, she is fear mongering. I don't think she knows it. I don't think she even know. I think she genuinely believes what she's saying.
She's getting very wealthy. She's got a new #1 best-selling book out there that she didn't even write. She just got collections of other things that people write, and they threw her name on the cover. And so she's making a lot of money and has made a lot of money from this.
I actually own one of those books because I wanted to just see, okay, it's a children's book. It's meant for like 3-year-olds. My son's 3, so I was like, let me just see what this is all about. And so I read him the book, and I thought once was enough, just because it was a little too woke for me. And like you said, I didn't want to scare my child into staying up at night thinking that the world was going to come to an end. Now, it wasn't that much of a fear-mongering book. It was a children's book. But I do agree with you in the sense that she is spreading falsehoods. She doesn't really, when you listen, the point I'm making here is when you actually listen to her, it's mostly emotion and very little science and research behind what she's saying, which I think kills her entire argument.
I'll make a suggestion then for you. The CO2 Coalition that I lead is just completing, we're rolling out a new website called CO2 Learning Center. We've created now 3, we're working on finishing up our 4th series of science-based comic books. They're done manga style. We have anime style videos that you could look. Is it a daughter or a son that you have?
2 sons.
Oh, how old?
Very young, 3 and 1.
Okay, well, my granddaughter rather, she was 4, almost 5, when she first read our first book. It was called Once Upon a Time, The True Story of the Miracle Molecule, Carbon Dioxide. But she read that to me, and she stumbled over 2 words, veterinarian and photosynthesis. But other than that, and she just loves these books, the children, again, because we've got a Brazilian artist, Tiago Hellinger, that does this anime style. And if you want to go see our videos, your children would, I think the videos are entrancing and they're really interesting. It's at CO2 Learning Center, YouTube channel, CO2 Learning Center. They're really cool. We're very proud of what we're trying to do. We're trying to push back against the indoctrination and the false science that's being spread by Greta and Al Gore. We're trying to put the science, the facts, and the data. And so we've created these books, the videos, and we also have lesson plans that we've created to go along with these. In fact, we went to the National Science Teaching Association annual meeting last week, promoting our materials, and they ended up kicking us out of the convention. They told us we had to remove our materials. This is how bad it's become. The censorship is rampant, and they told us we had to pack up and get out. You're not allowed to spread, because we had unapproved science that didn't conform this to this notion of the consensus opinion of man-made catastrophic warming.
I'm on CO2 Learning Center right now. I highly recommend our listeners. Look, whether you agree or not, just watch, like you said, censorship, you need to see, and that's something that we've lost in just the world. It's not just in the United States. I remember, and I'm sure debate is still around in like middle school and in high school, but the entire point of like debate class is a judge or a proctor gives you a topic and a side to be on. So you can be somebody personally who's completely Greta Thunberg and she's great and I think we need to fight against climate change, blah, blah. But if a proctor says, hey, you need to take the other side on this issue, then you're forced to think about it and do research on it. And I think most people, they just refuse to even acknowledge that there is another side, or it's not even 2 sides. There are really like 4 or 5 different sides. And I'm on your CO2 Learning Center YouTube page right now, and we're going to include this in the show notes. But you've got some, I haven't watched the videos, but they're short. They're about 5 minutes long. And some of the topics include where gases come from, the magic molecule, like you brought up. These are cartoons. And so my recommendation to you guys, because I think adults, it's hard to change their minds, but when you see the indoctrination of children, I think you need to make things more kid-friendly, and Greta Thunberg's doing that. That's why she's succeeding at getting her inaccurate messaging out. I think children's books, like you said, comic books, etc., those are good places to start for sure.
Yeah, we've got the book that all the kids love is our second in the series. It's called Simon the Solar Powered Cat. And it goes back to deal with just about everything. And anything you come in contact with really is derived from sunshine, from the sun. And Simon the Solar Powered Cat, the girls on the farm next door to the kindly professor that explains all this to them, they learn that their cat, his energy is derived from the sun, that the meat that's in his food are from chickens that eat grain that's grown by photosynthesis and sunlight. They eat the bugs that again are in all of the things, but the basics of the book deal with photosynthesis and the sun. Others deal, like you say, the magic molecule. That's what we call water vapor. And it's magic. Watch the video and you'll learn some things. Water vapor, and I've learned this recently, has some really unusual properties that no other molecule has. You can learn about that with the magic molecule. The other one, CO2, we call the miracle molecule, because it's driving huge increases of vegetation around the world, from the near polar regions to the equator. Almost every ecological niche is benefiting from modest warming and more CO2. And we should celebrate that. And we talk about the warming. We've been warming. We are in a warming trend. It's been warming in fits and starts for more than 300 years. Bear in mind, we didn't start adding much CO2 to the atmosphere until the mid 20th century. So the first 250 years of that warming trend was entirely naturally driven. But now they're saying, oh, well, yeah, but that's all changed in the middle of the 20th century. No, it hasn't. That's not how science works. Those same natural forces that were causing warming for the first 250 years are still in place today. We don't dispute that carbon dioxide is increasing. We're glad it is. And we don't dispute that CO2 is a greenhouse gas and provides some warming. That's a fact also. But we just think it's very modest and overwhelmed by the natural forces that have been in action since the dawn of time.
And when you say that you believe it's very modest, I'm assuming you guys have some type of studies to back this up. It's not just a blind opinion. I mean, it's hard to get given your stance, it's pretty hard to get peer reviewed, because the establishment probably thinks that you're fake scientists or quacks or something.
Well, we've got some of the top scientists in the world. We've recently published a paper. It's called Nitrous Oxide and Climate, looking at the warming. There's three main greenhouse gases other than water vapor: CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide. We've looked at that and see what the warming potential is. These are top physicists like Dr. Will Happer, who's emeritus professor of physics at Princeton. He also, we've got recent publications over the last year and a half to 2 years on the warming potential of CO2 and the main greenhouse gases. And he believes, in the work that they've done in Dr. Weingarten, they believe that a doubling of CO2 from 400 to 800 would lead to about 0.8 of a degree of warming of the atmosphere, which is not catastrophic. It'll be mainly beneficial, slight warming of that. That'll lead to longer growing seasons. So 0.8 of a degree, but compare that to Al Gore, who believes it'll be 4.5 to 8 degrees of warming. And that's just, the science and the physics just don't support these ideas. So no, we do lots of the scientific. The physics are beyond me. I'm a geologist. I don't understand the physics, but I rely on people like Dr. William Happer or Dr. Richard Lindzen, who's emeritus professor at MIT. He recently published work through our coalition on methane and climate, again, looking at the warming potential of methane to find that it's even lower than that of CO2.
Can you, before we wrap up, just tell me, you said that you're a geologist. What attracted you to this specific field of study? Were you a young person and you just said, hey, I want to devote my life to this initiative, or how did it all play out?
I was a geologist, studied, I was a co-author of the first peer-reviewed comprehensive paper on the largest natural gas field in the world, the Marcellus Shale. But then I heard some of what we were being told about climate change, and particularly it was the acidification of the oceans. And I just knew that was false. I absolutely, positively, inconvertibly false that the oceans are becoming acidic. And I suspected other things. So this is my own personal search for the truth that I did. I went back to the base data and I said, I'm not going to trust anybody. I'm going to look at everything myself and look into it and see what's really going on. And so the book Inconvenient Facts was really the end result of my personal search for the truth.
Gregory Wrightstone, check out his book, Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. It has sold really well, too. Now, you're not at Al Gore's level. You're not worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but it's on Amazon. Also, his company, he's the executive director of the CO2 Coalition. The website is co2coalition.org. That's co2coalition.org. And you can also get the book, not just on Amazon, but get on his newsletter, read some blog posts at inconvenientfacts.org. That's inconvenientfacts.org. Gregory Wrightstone, any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners, or anything else you want to promote?
No, I'll just remind you to sleep well. There is no climate crisis.
I'll be sure to let my 3-year-old know about that.
All right. Thank you very much.
To all our listeners, check us out at workfromhomeshow.com. That's www.workfromhomeshow.com. Get on our mailing list there. If you have any questions, comments, email us. hello@workfromhomeshow.com. That's hello@workfromhomeshow.com. Follow us on social media. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on a few others. Just search for us. You can leave us a review on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever podcasting platform you use. And until next week, keep on working from home.